Good morning, members. Representative Fabian, do you have your calculator with you this morning?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Do you have your calculator with you this morning?
My calculator? Okay, I'll bite.
That's right. That's right. One of the things, members, that we are going to have to discuss, but we won't do it today, is that as part of the governor's budget, he's proposed raising fees on water. And so I have been looking at what we charge for water now, and it seems to me, no, it doesn't seem to me, these are the prices. So I put the prices up here, and we can give this to Representative Fabian if you would. So he has it right there. And so you can see the price per gallon that we charge for water. And it appears to me that it's whether it's dirty water or perfectly wonderful, pristine, ice mountain, spring-fed water. So the task for today is to get a better understanding of what this price means. And so I am going to ask you to give these to Representative Fabian. And if you would figure out the price of the water in each of these bottles for us in the report later. So you have the price per gallon, and you can use that to figure out.
I do have that, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'm going to have Representative Anderson help me with that, too. He was really good with his math here the other day.
I can't do math with that many zeros that way. Me either. I can do it with math with zeros that way. This one's trickier. All right. With that, members, welcome this morning. We'll get a report back from Representative Fabian in a little while. And Representative Torkelson is not here this morning. I believe Chris Wazinski is going to present this bill. Not here. Okay.
Patty's here.
Well, then we will have Representative Fritz, I see, is here. Welcome to the committee, Representative Fritz. I'm going to move your House File 1235 for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and members for having me. This is my first time before this committee, I think so. And I am a farm girl, so I feel right at home. And today, I am coming before you with a bill and an ask and some information about the Farm Business Management Program. I live in Faribault, which is in Rice County, and in Faribault South Central College has a long-standing, great farm business management program at South Central College. Just wanted to give a little overview, and then I have my new friend here to help me, who's been in this business a long time, Jerry Schoenfeld. So let me just begin, members, by saying that farm business management education programs have been a vital component of agricultural education in Minnesota since its origin in 1953. Minnesota Farm Bureau management education programs enroll over 2,500 farmers in MnSCU technical and community college systems. Farmers are students in a course of study designed to provide management education to farmers that focus on developing a better understanding of the financial position of the farm business as they strive to meet their personal, family, and business goals. Each of the 57 Farm Bureau management instructors works with about 40 to 50 farmers each year. and focuses individualized and group instruction on use of farm records that will assist farmers in the management decision-making process. In addition, farmers are expected to be able to A, establish personal, family, and business goals, B, compile accurate farm records, C, analyze and interpret records, D, demonstrate the functions of management, E, understand the short and long-term effects of management decisions, F, apply economic principles, G, use data to optimize the organization and efficiency of the business, and H, understand the foundations of human resource management. My farmers and your farmers and the great farmers of Minnesota are businessmen and businesswomen and business families and have a lot to do. And so this program is extremely helpful to them. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my testifier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jerry Schoenfeld. I work with the Minnesota Association of Agricultural Educators. First of all, House File 1235 provides $1 million per year for the purposes of farm business management. Some people might start off by questioning why would an education program be before this committee. I'll try to answer that in several parts. First of all, farm business management program is much more than an education program. And it's kind of a cross-jurisdictional program that works between the Department of Agriculture, the MNSCU system in terms of its education component, and the University of Minnesota in terms of its Center for Farm Financial Management. Throughout the years, there have been a lot of programs that have come before this committee and will be coming before this committee this year that work through the Department of Agriculture. Whether they're the RFA programs, the Rural Finance Authority, where there are several tens of millions of dollars that are put forth by this legislature for different programs. I would tell you that in most of those RFA programs, they are required to be a part of this farm business management program by statute. And the reason for that is because the legislature and the Department of Agriculture had seen fit that by being a part of this program, they got a better bang for their buck and more surety that the state of Minnesota was going to get returned its investment in terms of the loans. So there are a number of areas statutorily that require it. In addition to that, the Department of Agriculture also works with a number of organic programs, many of which are in this program, students that are in this program, and they are required as part of the funding that goes to the Department of Ag for organics and in some cases for scholarships and so forth to be a part of this program. Beyond that, this committee funds, for instance, a very small amount of mental health to MNSCU that works with farmers. And over the years, since way back in the mid-'80s, when a number of programs were started, whether it was farm advocates, farm mediation, all the different kinds of programs that were helped to assist farmers and maintain them, the Farm Business Management Program was one of the very lead programs in working with farmers to make certain that the other programs within the Department of Agriculture would succeed. And so that's part of the reason. The other point is that this committee has jurisdiction over the Minnesota Ag Education Leadership Council. The Minnesota Ag Education Leadership Council was started in 1997, and it was started by, at that time, was majority leader for the Democratic caucus was Representative Ted Winter. And he was the original author of that, along with Dallas Sams in the Senate. And so that particular program was put together to do something that really relates to this bill, and that is the fact that agricultural education and management kind of programs and those kinds of programs, as I said, are kind of cross-jurisdictional. They work between the Department of Agriculture, MNSCU, University of Minnesota, and other areas, even the Department of Education in some cases. So MNSCU was put together in order to deal with that, what is a problem, because it tends to be, as most of you know, that it's very easy to kind of shift one thing, well, that's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem, it's somebody else's problem. On the MLC board, it's a 17-member board, and in this bill, funding would go to them for a grant program. There is a grant program required by statute, so they have some practice in providing this kind of assistance. With regard to that, Meal C is comprised of a member from MNSCU, a member from the University of Minnesota, a member from the Department of Agriculture, a member from the Department of Education, and then several governor appointees, including additionally 6 legislators that serve on the board. And we think that that legislative overview of if this money goes forward is very important. And so we think it's a venue that might work. I will tell you this, if people have a problem with that in some way, to change it to be in consultation with Meal C and run the funding directly through the Department of Ag would not be something I would object to. So, but I do think it provides a venue to deal with this issue. There are 2,500 students in this, and I asked, this morning I had a nice presentation for you on the screen, but I thought it would take too long with the timing we've got, and I see you've got about 19 bills in the deal. So I have asked that this be handed out. Has it been? Okay. You'll see then that there are about 2,500 farmers in the program. If you take a look at the second page, there's a student distribution. It shows you that it's throughout the state of throughout all of agricultural Minnesota. The second reason that this program, I think, deserves some funding through this division is the fact that beyond education, there is something else that comes out of this program, and it's the Farm Database for Minnesota. It's nationally recognized as the best farm database in the nation. It is used by the Department of Agriculture. It is used by the Ag Economics Department. It is used by creditors across this state. It is used by many, many people in a public venue. And I have copies of, for instance, the database, and I didn't pass these out because, quite frankly, I only have 10, and I didn't want to choose which legislator was going to get them today. But if anyone specifically wants to see it, I can share a copy with you. This happens to be 63 pages of data that is compiled through this program. It is used, as I said, much more broadly. It was used to write the last federal farm bill. Information, Colin Peterson took it and used the information to do that. So it's used in a public way, and part of what I'm suggesting here is that, therefore, the Department of Agriculture has a spot in all of it. The next page, the other thing I'd point out is that the students in this program represent about 4.3% of the total farmers in the state. Now, their return on investment to the state of Minnesota through taxes, through whatever economic development that comes forth, the students in this program presently have about $1.4 billion worth of gross sales, of farm sales. And so if you look at the economic activity within their areas, on average, each farmer that's involved in this program spreads throughout the community about $700,000 that comes from their farming activities. On the next page, you'll see that there is a letter here from the Department of Agriculture from Deputy Commissioner Jim Borboom, who's worked with this program over the years, both as a creditor and as a commissioner. And he points out some things here that you might be interested in terms of how they use the information from this program through the Department of Agriculture. The next point as to why this bill is here and why we've suggested it goes through the Department of Ag and Meal C is this. The legislature has long recognized that this is a high-cost program. It's not like a typical education program where you put 200 or 300 students in an auditorium and take art history classes. It's a high-cost program. It's a one-on-one delivery system in which these instructors go out and work in the countryside on the farms with these individual students. And so that's why they're limited to 40 to 50 students for each instructor. And because of that, the legislature has long recognized that. In 1986, during the farm crisis, the legislature chose the Farm Business Management Program as kind of the lead front in dealing with some of the farm crisis. So I pointed out here in the previous legislative support that, for instance, in 1986, there was $1.3 million put into the ABTI base, which then it was transferred to the MNSCU base when MNSCU was originated after that point in time. And so those funds were there. And then, there's another page here that shows that throughout the years, MNSCU carried those funds, and they were used in two areas. One was to support the excess costs of the Farm Business Management Program, and the other area was to provide a subsidy for tuition for the people that were in it. And I'll point that out on another page. In 2005, in the higher education bill, there was another $1 million that was put into it. Unfortunately, all of that money has been either absorbed, redirected, or cancel. And so because of that, we presently face a shortage within this program that amounts to somewhere between approximately $2 million per year and $3.5 million a year. And the reason I say somewhere between is because from the outside it's a little difficult to get into the inside of MnSCU's books. But they have provided me with several different projections, and I can tell you that those projections have varied in that general range. So what I have done here, on the next page I'd like you to take a look at the trends. And one of the problems is that instructors have not been replaced. Starting in 2000, there were 105 instructors in this area. Today we're down to 55, actually. We've lost 2 more. But it shows 57 down in 2013. If you look on the left, you'll see an area that says subsidy. These are the 2 areas that I talked about previously in terms of the additional funds that came through the legislature in the past. But if you notice in 2012, 2013, they're zeroed out. And basically the argument by MnSCU was that when the legislature made cuts, that they made cuts in this area and they used this area to cut the program. And so the next thing that you want to point out here, that I'd like to point out, is in terms of the cost to the students, because this is one area that could be used to deal with this issue. The credit cost has gone up from $75 to approximately $175. And the point there is that these students are non-traditional students and don't qualify for financial aid in the same way that other students do, so that they're paying these credit costs for the most part directly. If you were to take a look at the next page, it points out some of the projected shortfall. And I have 2 squiggly lines there at the bottom, and you'll see that these are this cost analysis is the least cost that you could look at, and that is because it does not include any direct costs for the college at all. No direct costs are figured in these numbers. These are straight salary, benefits, and supplies. And so the total cost is presently approximately $6.2 million statewide and about $4.2 million in terms of revenues presently coming in. And then you'll see a chart that shows the population served. There are several, over the last 4 years, there have been several attempts to look at what could be done to solve this problem. The problem is this. We've got 4 potential solutions that have come forth through the system. One of those solutions is that they would increase the credit cost on every student in the program. What that would mean is that the cost per credit would go from about $173 up to almost $300 per credit. So $1,700 a year. They take 10 credits per year, so it would be $1,700 up to $3,000. My concern there is that in doing that, you're going to have a law of diminishing returns in which a lot of these students that are presently $2,500 would drop out because they wouldn't be paying that kind of a situation. A number of these farmers in this, 40% at least, are in the first 6 years of farming. And so they are people that are not in the position like all farmers today. There are some very rich farmers today that could well afford more, but not all. And secondly, the second portion of this is that there has been a suggestion through MnSCU, and these suggestions are coming from the administration on down, that they would provide, for the first 6 years, maintain it at $1,700 per year, but after those 6 years, the other students would have to pick up an additional cost on a customized training basis. That would be somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 per student. And at that point, because of the fact you're maintaining the first, about 40% of those students at the existing rate of $1,700 a year, to pick up that addition, to put all the burden on those additional students that are the other 60% that are beyond 6 years, would be $4,000 to $5,000 per student. The third solution that they've suggested is change the delivery system. And MnSCU itself did a lot of study, and they provided studies that took a look at what the preferences by farmers were for the delivery system. And what they found on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being the most preferred, 1 being the least preferred, and I've got a very detailed study that talks to all this, that was done by MnSCU in June of 2012. And what it shows is that 5.4% of the that when rated, a one-on-one individualized instruction as it presently is was at a 5.4. Online delivery was at 1.8. One of the potential solutions they've suggested is not having any, no longer doing the one-on-one delivery system and looking at an online program. That, Madam Chair and members, probably would cause the end of the program, because I don't think these farmers would participate at that level. And it's by the study that they've done. The last one is other models that might arise from the discussions, and the only one that has come up so far is that it is the instructors' salaries have now been included as part of the discussion for readjustment with regard to their contracts to lower the cost. And so beyond that, Madam Chair, I've come to the conclusion that the only salvation of this is a combination of efforts to come up with about $2.5 million. $1 million is being asked of this committee because of the database and the things that it supplies to support the Department of Agriculture and other areas. And the other portion is going to have to come out of either MNSCU or some area like that. I might also mention to you that the Center for Financial Management is part of this program and at the University of Minnesota. So it is a kind of a thing between a number of things. We might look there as well. And so, ma'am, that's the crux of what is being asked here. And what we are really asking of this committee is to support the agricultural infrastructure of our state, to maintain the statewide database that we have that is used throughout the country, support the return on investment of the $1.4 billion that these farmers supply to the economy, and then just generally to support our systems. So thank you, Madam Chair. Any questions?
Yeah, there are questions. Representative McNamara is first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Fritz, is this $2 million in the governor's recommendation?
No.
No, it is not.
Okay, and thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Fritz, is either the corn checkoff or the soybean checkoff been pursued to fund this money?
Madam Chair, there are a number of areas that do come in. There have been funds that have, first of all, if you were to use the corn checkoff or the soybean checkoff, you'd take pretty much all of it in order to do this $2 million level. But secondly, there have been grants that have come from some of the commodity groups to support some of this. Bankers have done so. If you look at, I think I had it here in terms of the numbers. If you look, there's a couple of areas on there, I think, that show bank support and also support through the organics program. On the sheet that, yes. If you take a look at, for instance, it says MDO/banks. Those funds are coming directly from banks in support of this for people that they're giving loans to. And then I mentioned financial assistance was generally not available to these programs or to these students through generally not available, but there is a small amount that does come through, and it's $146,000. So those are a couple of other areas that come into the system. And yes, there have been specific requests, but not for the whole program.
Madam Chair, just the last question. Representative Fritz, how do farm income families compare to the average Minnesotan's income today?
Madam Chair, Representative McNamara, if you take a look at, I also handed out this group here that talks about organics and so forth, organic farm performance in Minnesota. And the reason I wanted to do that was I wanted to show that one of the new areas that is in this in the last 6 years has been the organic component as well as traditional farms. And if you look on the last page, you'll find that there's an organic area and then there's also an area for non-traditional or conventional non-organic farms by year. And if you look at this, what you'll find is that the net farm income is listed and so forth. But recognize net farm income is not only for family income. It's not just to spend to buy the new automobile, but it's also used to repay debt, and it's also used for expansion. And so those numbers, if you take a look at, I would say farm families typically spend the same amount that most families do. And the difference is that there's a mix, and you can see through from some of these numbers the comparison, but those funds are used. Net farm income is used for more than just family expenditures, so don't get the idea that they're just taking that and spend it on themselves.
Thank you. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Schoenfeld and Representative Fritz. This is a good program. My brother had gone to Mankato when he was in technical school, as it was called then, and his advisor retired, and then he kept working with him, and then now he's retired from retirement. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but I know people work with this. To me, kind of looking at your trend line, you know, we go to 0 and 0 and 12 and 13, and used to have quite a bit of public support for this, but I think it gets to kind of where we're at this point in the session of we've got to have some money to pay for things if we want them to happen. Representative McNamara talked about fees by the users, or we go with the bill and we will have to raise some revenue, raise some taxes to backfill the cuts that have occurred. That's if we want to keep the programs going. So hopefully, you know, we can continue to do that. I do have a question about maybe trying to reach out to underserved or unrepresented communities throughout the state, if there's any breakdown or any efforts that have been made trying to reach out to Hmong farmers or new immigrants or women farmers, just trying to, is there some information on that?
Madam Chair, Representative Hanson, indeed there is. When the 2005 appropriation was put in, the intent of that was to do exactly that, to provide some of these funds to go to underserved farmers. Unfortunately, when the cuts came a couple of years later, not much was done in that area. But part of that underserved was the organic farming. And as I point out with this area, there are approximately 50 organic farmers that are in this program right now. And they've been brought in large part through participation with the Department of Agriculture, as you know, provides certification for a program for organic farmers. I can provide you with this study, which I only gave you a couple pages of it. It's very lengthy, and it talks about the underserved opportunities there. One other area specifically that deals with that is specialty crops area. And there was a program, I believe at Staples, in the Staples area, that provide for specialty crops. Interestingly enough, last year when we had discussions about this, one of your state representatives, Ron, Representative, help me out from the Republican side, Szymanski, was a member of that program because he was an apple crop raiser. And there were other people with vegetable farming, and as you know, that's where the Hmong area generally is there, that were participating in that. I can't tell you specifically to whether, you know, what minorities were there, but I think we could find that information now. If you read the letter that's in your packet from the Department of Agriculture, Deputy Commissioner Borboom, he speaks to that as his vision as to how this might be utilized. So there have been attempts made to move in that direction. We've done it with organic growers and have done it with the specialty crops. That specialty crops was eliminated at the one college, but it was picked up by one of the other colleges. So there is a specialty crops FBM instructor that only deals with those areas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up, has there been any interest from, let's say, Dakota County Technical College or Inver Hills or Metro State, specifically from Hmong farmers?
Madam Chair, Representative Hanson, I don't know the answer.
Last question is Representative Poppy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to Mr. Schoenfeld. I just have a couple of questions about the logistics of the appropriation. So it would go to MAIL-C to contract with member organizations, and just wondering if there are other than MNSCU, are there other organizations that are providing farm business management programs, and are you indicating that it would go to people other than MNSCU, or how is that?
Madam Chair, there is one other area in the Extension Service that the University of Minnesota does have about 200 students that are in a separate kind of a program, but that was not the intent. And if you know, the reason that I chose to direct the funds in this way was the fact that if you look at the proposals by MNSCU in terms of whether it's tuition increases, whether it's reduction of access by reducing numbers of instructors, whether it's, there's a number of different ways that this can be approached, and it's going to have to be approached because this, even at $1 million, this isn't going to solve it by itself. And so there's going to have to be, and I felt that the different entities on that group, because, as an example, the University of Minnesota receives funds from MINSCU for the Center for Farm Financial Management to create the database. This is a cooperative deal between different areas. And so my point was that they would be able to best work it out, and you serve on that committee. And so I felt that with the guidance of the legislators at the same time, that those funds could most appropriately be directed and get the best bang for the buck. But it was not intended to go anyplace else in that sense.
Madam Chair, thank you. And as you've indicated, the money you're trying to figure out how it would best be used, as I'm understanding. And one of those categories, I believe we were talking about, were faculty salaries. And since the faculty are members of the same faculty union that I'm a member of, I'm not sure how that would actually be able to be done because we're part of a...
Madam Chair, I'm not speaking about using this money for faculty salaries.
Okay.
I'm merely saying that the union that you are a member of is present in I've seen, as of last week, I saw that MINSCU, the system, had requested that what's called Article 12, or the area of the contract that deals with faculty salaries for farm business management instruction, be brought up for review and revisited to see if they could change it so that they could essentially, at some point, get a better situation for the system with the instructors. I only point out that that's one part of what may be a final solution to come up with $2.5 million. And so I'm not suggesting this money be used for faculty salaries directly. I mean, it is in the sense that it goes to the system and the system uses it to support it, but not directly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then just another question in a different way on the Farm Business Management Database. You indicated the value of that. What is the cost of actually compiling that and distributing that? Do you have that?
Madam Chair, it's something I can easily get, but I didn't think of asking that question. I will get it for you.
Should we have two very quick questions over here? Representative Keel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to give a little input. My son came back to farm with us, and because he purchased some land, he is required to take this class. And it has been a really good background for running the farm and just some really good education. And my point being is that if we want young farmers, which are getting scarce, this is a good background base for them. And many of them have come off of education, but it gives them a little bit more of a solid effort when farming is off and on. And yes, we are seeing some real good numbers right now, but that won't exist for very long. It's usually cyclical, about 30, 40 years that we have these kind of booms, and then it will go away and there will be other problems. So, but it helps those young farmers really work on that program, and it encourages that. Also encourages these specialty crops of some of the smaller farmers and immigrants that really want to farm and expand their programs. So, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. We're going to lay this over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, members, for good questions. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Representative Fabian, do you have a report for us?
Yeah, I bet on it, Madam Chair, I did, yes. I had the staff do a little work for me. Obviously, I'm a FIAD teacher. I don't do the math thing very well, but, come on, I can pick on myself. I'm not picking on the profession. I'm not real good with decimal points and lots of zeros, but this 8-ounce bottle of water in a small city is a .0000044 cents. Okay? In a medium city, it's .000004375 cents. Are you writing this down there, Representative Erickson?
Got it.
Okay, good. In a large city, it would be .00088. In ag irrigation, it would be .00043. and in industry it'd be .0000028. I won't bore you with the numbers here, but you will be tested on this at the end of the day, so make sure that you've taken copious notes here, staff. I will point out one other thing, Madam Chair, as long as you brought it out. In a small city that I represent, we get our water from groundwater, and in the large city that I believe that Minneapolis, for example, you are paying a higher rate, but you're getting your water from surface water. Is that not correct?
That is one of the things that we need to talk to the department DNR about. Yes, we get very dirty water and clean it up. And so my water rates are, I'm sure, higher than most.
And then the other question I would ask of everybody is do the water rates cover the cost of all of this, or do they use the excess funds that they generate to put into their general funds?
Now, okay, so, but I think you're asking of the cities, do they cover their costs? This is just what the state charges. That's what the state charges. And as far as, I think it raises about we're going to get that figure, but it does not pay the costs it does not pay the state costs. But then, if it's the water, the municipality or whatever that has the big fees, and those are for piping and all the other things, cleaning up the water.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Benson, I know you were paying. He ran out on me. He knew I was going to ask him this question. Dirty rat. What was he? Okay, good. Can you? Here's your test, Representative Benson. I gave you the answer a little while ago. How much does a large city pay for this amount of water? Too much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I hope folks have memorized those, and I appreciate that because we are going to be dealing with these rates right after we come back from break. What I'd like to do this morning is some folks have guests from out of town, and we're going to take those bills, so I'm skipping around. And so Representative Fabian would be, you'd have guests from out of town.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. House File 949, as some of you are aware, is a bill that's been brought forward by my constituents, particularly the ones that are part of the northern Minnesota. We have a joint powers group up there that involves 7 counties, and the counties involved are Roseau, Marshall, Beltrami, Clearwater, Lake of the Woods, Aiken, and Couchiching. And the issue here is, and it goes back in history, we have consolidated conservation acres in the state of Minnesota, and there's a long history behind them, and some of my testifiers can give you a better report on that history. The issue is there's 2 laws that don't agree with each other. They conflict. The local ditch authority has the authority by law in Section 103, I believe it is, to establish, the ditch taxes. Also, then there's another law that's involved in Section 84 that allows the DNR to determine their benefits that they receive from the ditch system. And I've used this example before. Some of you have heard it. If I own a piece of property of 40 acres and I get assessed my $50 ditch tax or whatever the number is, and you own a piece of property right next to me and you get assessed 50, and the state owns another 40 acres right next to us, and we are connected to the same ditch system, we, as citizens, have to pay our ditch tax. DNR gets to determine their level of benefit from that ditch. And if they determine that their benefit is something less than what is assessed, then that's what they get to pay. What we contend is that even though DNR says that they don't receive a benefit from the ditch system, they still are, not they, but the land still is putting water into the ditches. And with that water comes the sediment and so forth that results in ditches needing to be maintained. Now, when we talk about cleaning out ditches and maintaining ditches, I know that there are some misconceptions. When we clean out a ditch, we are not draining a wetland. There are a number of permitting issues that need to be resolved before you can start cleaning out the ditches. So what we're asking for with House File 949 is just for the state of Minnesota to pay their share of the ditch tax. You have a letter in your packet, I believe, from the Roseau County Board. In the middle paragraph, it says there, it's our belief that the state of Minnesota should pay their fair share of the ditch tax as determined by independent viewers. That is, the state should be treated the same way as other landowners. So, I do have a few testifiers. I'm not Scott. And if you have some questions, I would like, this is Scott Peters, and he'll introduce himself, but he can give you an example of what's going on in Marshall County in terms of how much was assessed and how much was actually paid. Identify yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Scott Peters. I'm Marshall County Auditor Treasurer. Thanks for having us. We appreciate it very much.
Could you say that again for me?
My name is Scott Peters. I'm the Marshall County Auditor Treasurer.
Marshall County.
Thank you, Representative. We came 300 miles today just to talk to you folks because we feel it's important to talk about this issue, and we appreciate the time that you're allowing us here. We wouldn't come here if we didn't think we have an issue, obviously. We want to work with everybody. We're trying to make things right and fair, which I think all of us are in the same room. What's in the best interest of everybody? Fairness, things like that are important. We have I don't know how to start. I won't take a lot of time, but to understand what a ditch system is, I tried to talk to some of the people in this room individually so you could maybe grasp what we're talking about. But if it's a ditch or if it's a road, it costs to keep those things up. It costs to build them. And back in our county, in our counties here, some of these ditches were built back in the early 1900s. So the ditch was built, or let's say a road was built, so if you can understand that. And it costs a bit to do that. And if this is the ditch, and we all benefit from that ditch or road, we have to pay to build it. We have to pay to maintain it. Life was good. There was a law called 103E that said this is how we all pay into this system because that's the fairest way. Everybody gets a benefit, a use of that ditch or that road, let's say. What happened, though, in the 20s is disaster struck. The 20s were bad years. People lost their land. So this half of the room went away. They were no longer able to pay into the system. They were still into the system, but there was nobody left to tax. We couldn't tax them because they were gone. They left. And that became prevalent in all of our counties and was hard to keep money in this system to make sure it stayed up. So the road didn't get fixed and the ditch isn't getting fixed. These people are gone. And we're still paying our share, but there's not enough money in the system. So the state comes in and says, we'll help you guys out. We don't want to have a financial hardship on you people. And then these counties, so we'll help you out. We'll come in, we'll now, as the state, come in and we'll become the landowner. And it's the land forfeited, and they took it over as con land. So all land now in this con area became state-owned. All of us in this room own this land. And life was still good. 103E still was the law that we were following. We were taxing and sending out the statements. People were paying in, so the ditch still got to be used and maintained. The road got to be used, whatever you want to call it, and it was good. About 84, they started saying, the state started looking at this differently and said, golly, I don't agree with this. We think we should change things. I don't know if, water still goes in there, but maybe we shouldn't be taxed because our land is different. Now, when this was established under 103E, there were some people that came in, 3 viewers that said, here's how it should be assessed. Here's how, they were independent, they were private. They came and said, here's how the land should be taxed. So we still tax to this day based on that law. However, the law has changed. 84A said, okay, we'll let you try some things. we'll let you not pay in to this system, or you decide how you should pay into it, decide what you benefit yourself. You can look at it yourself, and you can decide what to or not to pay into it. This side of the room said, well, that's not fair. We are all under the same realm, but now all of a sudden the rules have changed. And the laws protect, we still have to send the tax statements out, but now the state does not have to pay them. Since 2010, the state has paid no money to these ditch systems that are either in the Con area and even outside of it, which everybody's still governed by 103 outside the Con area. Under the Con area, 84A does rule the law, and so the state does not have to pay except for what they determine. In Marshall County, there was 3,000 parcels that as the state looked at approximately, and of those they said 150 of them got some benefit, but not how it drains into that system, but how they feel the wildlife is propagated on that land. So 5% of the parcels, they said, we'll maybe pay some, but we're not going to pay an assessment, we'll pay it only on a project. If you do a project on that, we'll decide if those 150 parcels of the 3,000 should pay. We've created a mess. 103E and 84A, we've tried it. It's not worked. These people have paid and paid and paid forever. The state came in and said, we don't want to have financial hardship, but that's exactly what's happening. The hardship on these people, the ditch system, these roads that are failing, the sense of why we have to send tax statements out and the state doesn't have to pay, defining what the word benefit means. Hydrology, how it drained, hydrologically, how it drained in before, and now how the new definition of it has changed completely. This style room has one set of definitions, this side still has the old set. And it just is not working. We need to please look at changing 84A.
Representative Fabian, and then we'll have DNR come up.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to clarify, Mr. Peters talks about a parcel, and he talked about 3,000 parcels. A parcel is defined as 40 acres. Okay, so when we talk about 3,000 parcels in Marshall County, you're talking about 120,000 acres of con lands. And the state is paying benefit on, what did you say, 5% or less?
5%.
I just want to clarify. I mean, we're talking about tremendously large numbers of acres here, and this is putting an artificial inflator on local property taxes, ditch taxes, because you still have to maintain the ditches. And I want to emphasize again that we're not, when we talk about ditches, we're talking about roadside ditches and those types of things. We're not talking about draining wetlands and all of that sort of stuff. So if we could kind of clear that misconception. I've had that discussion with one of the other members, and I think that we're making some progress on that. So
can I say one more thing? Total cost for this, approximately, that the state, if we ask them to pay with all the counties, is about $300,000 a year. Over the past 20 years now, from 93 till now, this rural process has happened. There's been tons of disagreements, arguments, lawsuits. Really unfortunate that we've had to have that between agencies, but it's happened. Back taxes that aren't owed in that time period, about $4.5 to $5 million. I don't have the exact numbers. Not so concerned about that. We're concerned about where we move from this point forward. And that's so important that we get some clarity in how we can move forward. If Mr. Frost can have a chance, he has one comment he'd like to say to the committee before. He's a commissioner from Beltrami County. He has some good words as well, if he could.
That would be fine. Did you move your bill, Representative Fabian? I don't think so.
I did not, Madam Chair. Okay. I would like to move House File 949 for possible inclusion.
Thank you.
Identify yourself, please.
Madam Chair, thanks for your indulgence, letting me speak briefly. I just want to encapsulate some thoughts here. Beltrami County Commissioner, born in Rochester, Minnesota, worked on Grandpa's Farm in Dakota County, grew up in Minneapolis, now live in Bemidji, Minnesota. So you can kind of get a sense for my geographic migration to the land of the frozen. But the spirit and intent here is kind of what I'd like to appeal to your senses on regarding the issue at hand here. We've already articulated the conflict between 103E and 84A. And I just want to briefly say that I think that what I learned from my farmer grandfather was, you know, a deal is a deal. Your word is your oath. And to that extent, do we renege on a commitment that the spirit and intent of was not to create harm or hardship for the tax-paying citizens in the northern part of Minnesota? I've had to come to realize and embrace the differences, knowing from the legislative perspective of being in the metro and now living in greater Minnesota, that these needs are very real to folks of lesser means than the folks in the metro, perhaps. But let's bear in mind the spirit and intent was not to create harm to the taxpayers of the greater part of the state in this Con area. I would like to ask that we support House File 949, Mr. Erickson's bill, to create that bond of this is a deal that we have made and forged over many decades. We would like to share the spirit of it. Our intent is to let's forget about the past, let's move forward and commit to paying these ditch assessments so that we can provide the service delivery that is promulgated by, you know, the law of 103E. And I thank you for your indulgence letting me speak, and thank you.
Thank you. I think it would be timely to have DNR come and comment on this bill.
Madam Chair, members, for the record, Bob Meyer, Department of Natural Resources. I also have with me Paul Thielander, our Wildlife Section Manager. Paul has worked on these lands extensively up in the Northwest region. He's going to provide a little bit of background on these lands, what they are, and what the purposes are of them, and then I will provide a little bit of context after that.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, like Bob said, my name is Paul Thielander. I'm the Wildlife Section Chief for DNR.
You're going to need to get closer to the microphone.
Is that better? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Just some background on the Con lands. Scott Peters provided some comments on how these lands originated. There were millions of acres of lands drained and ditched back in the early 1900s. And like he mentioned, at the request of the counties, there was legislation passed beginning in 1929 that required the state to pay ditch taxes that the counties owed, and in turn the state received title of the land in the area that became the Consolidated Conservation Area. And the lands that went tax forfeit in that area became known as Con lands. In 1984, there was a statute enacted by Minnesota which authorized the DNR commissioner to adopt rules for determining drainage benefits to state lands, and the process was formally initiated in 2002. Between 2000 and 2001, the counties and landowners filed a lawsuit opposing this action. In 2001, the Court of Appeals stated that the DNR commissioner had nearly total discretion in determining how much should be paid on assessments on Con lands. In 2008, DNR adopted a rule which is upheld by an administrative law judge. So from 2009 to the present, DNR has continued to work, operate under 84A, Statute 84A, following the rule, and has been through the review in several counties. And our plan is to continue to proceed with the remaining counties. There were 7 Con counties. 84A does differ from 103E in that the DNR commissioner can determine whether or not to participate in a repair project, and we think that the commissioner needs to retain that authority. In the counties where we've done the determination, most of the state lands do not benefit from the drainage action. It's been in the range of about 5 to 10% of the lands in the counties that we've done. And Scott Peters did mention Marshall County. I think there were 152 of the 2,900 parcels that were benefited in that county. So a pretty low percentage. Where the state lands do benefit, we do pay assessments. A couple of examples where the state land would benefit would be where we use agricultural land to manage our state land. In the case of food plots, or if we do wildlife impoundments that are exclusively for wildlife management purposes, we'd pay benefits on those lands. The lands also provide natural storage, and we want to retain that capability of water storage naturally. Con legislation from the beginning in 1929 throughout legislative history has shown the legislative intent to hold these lands unique to the Commissioner's authority to ascribe drainage benefits for the purpose for which the area was established, and this is outlined in 84A, .55 subdivision 1. Benefits under Con legislative history have never been the same as defined under 103E or 103D.
Closer to the microphone.
They are, as the Commissioner determines, with guidance under the Con statutes. And the commissioner rarely uses or depends upon legal drainage systems in the Con area to affect or enable management operations on those lands. Where such use is found, the evaluation team does ascribe benefits, and we would pay accordingly. I also want to mention that DNR is a huge partner in flood damage reduction efforts in the Con areas via water storage and joint flood control impoundments, water infiltration, and water quality. And this greatly benefits drainage by reducing runoff and flood damage that from otherwise increased flows. And lastly, just want to mention again that the administrative law judge did affirm that the rule was supported by both statute and appellate court decision. Thank you.
Madam Chair, as you can see from Mr. Thielander's testimony, this has over a 40-year history. Since 1984, we've been working on these issues, and it has been litigated in the courts. We do understand the concerns that these folks do have about us not participating in some of the expenses and repairs of the system. We are committed to sit down and work with these folks and talk with them over the interim and try to determine how can we redetermine these benefits and making sure that where there are benefits that may or may not be determined right now. For example, if there's a road, a forest road, or a road within a system that is providing water into this ditch system and we aren't providing payments for that, we need to make sure that we are. It's not an easy system. If the legislature were just to appropriate us a line item for these payments, that would be another option to do this. But these are conservation lands. They aren't lands that are being hayed or cropped. We want to keep the water on these lands for the most part, and also work with these stakeholders and the constituents in these areas to make sure that our lands are holding water and maintaining water to their best of their ability. So we need to work with them on that aspect as well.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question is, Chief Thielander, what fund do these monies potentially come from? Do you use more than one fund, or where, when you do pay the ditch tax, where do you take the money from?
Madam Chair, Representative McNamara, the funds for all the DNR ditch assessments are paid come from general revenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then my second question would be, what was that amount in the last biennium or last year?
Madam Chair, Representative McNamara, I do not have that figure available.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. If you could get that to the chair, I would appreciate it. And then, have you looked at the idea that you would just sell enough land to more than compensate to adequately pay these ditch taxes? And are you sure that there's not land that you could be selling that could either be productive ag or used by the general public for hunting land or some other purpose? It seems like there's such a vast amount of this public land up there, and that some of it may be able to be sold. Have you really tried hard to sell any of this land?
Madam Chair, Representative McNamara. Yeah, if you look at the history of Con land sales, there's been a large acreage that's already been sold. I can give you examples on two of the counties. In Marshall County, about 53% of the original Con lands were sold in that county. In Roseau County, about 36% of the Con lands were sold. And those were primarily the higher, better drained soils, the better agricultural lands that were sold back. Most of what remained are the more marginal lands that are better for wildlife habitat, and that's what remains in the landscape today in public ownership.
Madam Chair, on that point.
Well, you still haven't answered my question. Are you trying to sell any today? I get that you've sold some in the past. I want to know if you're selling any today.
Okay. Madam Chair, Representative McNamara, we have not.
Thank you.
May I finish?
You may finish, absolutely.
Okay. Representative, or Madam Chair, Representative McNamara, we have worked through a county land asset management process in Roseau County. We plan to do that in the remaining counties as well in the Northwest region. And for those counties that do have Con lands, we would be identifying some of those lands for either sale, exchange, retention, those kinds of things. So there would be some of those lands identified in that process.
Just to straighten this out for me a little bit. How much of this would you say is to benefit wildlife and how much not? Is there a percentage for there?
Madam Chair, of the remaining acreage that's in state ownership?
Is it in state ownership, yes.
Yeah, I would say essentially all of the remaining ownership is managed for wildlife and benefits wildlife populations. There are also other benefits to those lands. A lot of the land is forested land where timber sales are sold and revenues generated for the Con Fund, half of which goes to the state and half of which goes to the counties.
And that would raise the question of why the general fund is paying rather than the Fish and Game Fund, wouldn't you think, Representative McNamara? Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And when we had the commissioner in here, I asked him a question if he believed that the DNR should be held to the same standards and abide by the same laws and rules as everybody else in the state. And he said yes. And, you know, so I thank you for bringing this forward, Representative Fabian. And you know, you talked about this has been a 40-year issue, and yet you're willing to visit with them over the interim. I'm thinking that we should address this legislatively, and it's interesting. You know, it'd be great if I could pay my property taxes on my perceived value. You know, that would be a benefit, I think, to us. But again, the DNR must be held to the same standards as everybody else in the state. That's my comment. And then back to Representative McNamara's question, how much land has the DNR sold back to the private sector?
Madam Chair, Representative, like I mentioned before to Representative McNamara, we've sold, I don't have an overall acreage figure, but in Marshall County it was about 53% of that original land base of Con lands, and in Roseville it was 36%. And then there were varying amounts in the other counties like Lake of the Woods, Beltrami, and so on. I can get you those figures. I don't have a total for you offhand here.
Representative Anderson, did you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Was that a go-ahead? Okay, thanks. I would agree, too, that if this has been an ongoing situation for 40 years, we're not making, in my opinion, enough progress to satisfy the local folks up there. And I would agree that we should address this now and do it legislatively and get this thing resolved and make it right with the people up there. It is an issue of fairness.
Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions on the ditch systems. Are there any systems that are in the Con lands that are formally abandoned?
Madam Chair, Representative Hanson. I think there's only one ditch, I believe it's in Lake of the Woods County, that was formally abandoned that I'm aware of. I think in the other counties it has not occurred. I think that's one of the things we'd like to entertain a discussion with the counties on as we go through this redetermination process. Because I believe there are ditches out there that are in some of the forested areas, in the midst of some of the blocks of state land that don't serve a real function anymore that we could look at possible abandonment on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then, are there any ditch systems where, I'm familiar in some of these areas, you have a patchwork of public land and private land where you have a system where it is maintained on private land but perhaps virtually abandoned? And I understand the difference between abandonment and with a capital A and abandonment by lack of action. Where it's virtually abandoned on the public lands, is there anything where these systems cross that cross-hatching?
Madam Chair, Representative Hanson, I'm not sure if I quite understand the question. Can you provide some additional detail, please?
Madam Chair, so let's say you've got a 160 and you've got 240s in that are Con lands, but they're not adjacent to each other. They're touching at the corner. Let's say it's the southeast corner and the northwest corner or something like that. And then you've got the ditch system that goes across the 160. So you're draining private land and you're draining public land. And the private landowner has to maintain the ditch system and gets a redetermination, or gets benefits assigned to that private land. And that system is can be cleaned out or maintained, but it goes into and out of the public land. Are there situations like that where you have the system crossing private land and public land, and you have different responsibilities for the landowners?
Madam Chair, Representative Hanson, yes, those kind of situations do exist out there where a ditch might intersect both private land and public land.
And then, Madam Chair, and this kind of gets back to some of the questions on the other side of the aisle, is there an opportunity for switching some of these lands around that are with it, so the systems can be intact within either private land or public land? And maybe that's done through transfer and swapping, or maybe it's done through purchase or sale. Have you looked at that issue on these ditch systems?
Madam Chair, Representative Hansen. Yes, I believe that possibly does exist. I think there's potential for land exchange to try to block up some of the con lands and some of the private lands as well. Some of the patchwork of lands that exist is a result of some of the earlier sales that occurred, where some of the state lands were sold, and that created a patchwork of mixed ownership, and I think that is a possibility. We could look into that. We have actually looked at some of that in the past and do have a list of land exchange candidate parcels.
Finally, Madam Chair, I'm looking at the large stack of handouts that we received here, and I noticed some of them are from 2011. And Representative Fabian, was there a bill put in last year, or is this the first time this has happened?
Madam Chair, Representative Hansen, this is the first bill that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the public has a great appetite for public land, and the public has a terrible appetite for paying the bills that come along with the public land. I mean, 40 years on this, and 1964 on the Boundary Waters land that's locked up in the school trust issue that we've discussed, inflation on PILT. It just goes on and on and on, and there never seems to be an end. And I know a lot of people around this table have great intentions of making it right, but when the checkbook gets low, we don't make it right. We're the first to take advantage of ourselves. So I have a lot of empathy for this as other situations like this. So I think we should do something about it. You can only work together so long until finally you just say, like, forget it. We're doing something about it. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Just hang on. What, I hate to weigh in on the ditch issue because that's a dangerous ground, and I know it's dangerous ground, but what I am hearing are different definitions of benefit. That comes across clearly to me. And when DNR talks about benefit, it is to wildlife. And, of course, we all support wildlife. So my sense of all of this is the expenses, as we weigh the benefit, should come from the Game and Fish Fund, not from the general fund. I don't see any, it doesn't seem right that the money is coming from the general fund, which for DNR has been ratcheted down, while the Game and Fish Fund is in good shape. So that's something that we all need to think about as we are wrestling with this issue. It's not an easy issue. Mr. Meyer.
Madam Chair, I think it's important for people to realize the DNR has been following the law. I mean, this is, as Mr. Thielander talked about, this has been going on since 1984, upheld by the courts, gone through an ALJ process. The rule that we have developed, and the legislature passed a law to give us the authority to do, gave us the power to evaluate and make the determinations of the benefits of these systems. So when Representative Dill says we are paying our bill, the language in current law gives us the authority to make that determination of the value of that system. So we are paying what we feel is our fair share of the benefits that are being received off of this system. So we are not paying our bill right.
Mr. Meyer, I think you're making my point. I don't doubt that, but we all have different definitions of benefit here, and we haven't come to a common understanding of benefit. There's the ditch benefit, and you use benefit in a different way. So that's one of the things I think we're running into. We're going to have one more here, but I mean, we'll go till midnight tonight if it's necessary to get all the bills done today, because we are going to get them done. And I do want to respect people who come from a ways away, and I certainly want to get to Representative Torkelson's bill for that reason. But Representative Keel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering, Mr. Peters, could you tell me how many private landowners, or what is it a cost to the private landowners around in Marshall County? Do you have any idea?
The cost for
The ditch assessment.
total ditch assessments in our county, countywide are about $520,000 a year. On state property, it's about $35,000, $33,000 a year is what we assess their part of that. None is paid.
Of that, none is paid,
None
you
is
said?
paid right now, correct.
Okay.
In or outside of the confine area.
How much land would it be possible for DNR to ideally sell? Do you have any idea what they could sell in Marshall County?
145,000 acres plus in our county. And that's a debate that they'd have to answer.
Okay. Also, how much of that is the county? Is it half, a third?
Oh, no. 30, in the Concon area, state and federal land was like 36%, which is about the eastern third of our county. Greater percentage to the west is not in state ownership, but state and federal in the eastern third is about 36%.
Okay.
We are going to be here until midnight.
Thank you.
Representative Dill, real
Just
quick.
quick, Commissioner, you said 140-some thousand acres. How much of that do you think would be marketable?
It's all marketable. I mean, everybody has a desire, like they said themselves, of some of this is wooded land, some of it could probably still be farmed. Some is wetter, sure, but I mean, I own swampland too. I mean, it's all different kinds up there. It's swamp ridge, or it's all we have, I guess.
Thank you.
Oh, no. All right. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Representative Fabian. House File 949 has been laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And we will have...
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. Thank you.
Representative Kuczynski, you are presenting a bill for Representative Torkelson, and I will move House File 728 for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. House File 728 is a pretty straightforward bill. Historically, funds have been spent to the general fund, $120,000 a year for specific work through Area 2 on wetland management, water erosion, or dirt erosion, and floodplain management in 9 counties throughout southwest Minnesota. Some of the areas, the watersheds that the Area 2 has coverage over is the Yellow Bank, Lackaparl, Yellow Medicine, and Redwood and Cottonwood watershed district, or watersheds.
I wanted to...
Specifically, this is a very steep portion of the Minnesota River Valley, and they're doing a lot of work, water retention projects, road retention, grade stabilizations, wetland restorations. This money is specifically going to be used for administrative purposes, primarily in the area of contract engineering for getting projects on the ground. With me, I have the Chair of the Board of Directors and County Commissioner from Murray County, Bob Moline. So,
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee, for hearing me for a few moments. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about our Joint Powers Organization. It was created in 1978, and we're proudly celebrating our 35 years. At that time, we were receiving $250,000 in appropriations for administration and project, and through the state of Minnesota. A professional engineer was also provided by the state to design floodwater retention projects. This annual appropriation continued until the mid-1980s, when the amount was reduced 25% to $189,000. That funding level remained until 2001, when the administration also cut back at that time on the joint powers. Only 3 joint powers survived the spending cuts in that funding. For Area 2, it was cut another 26% from $189,000 down to $140,000. 2 years later, another 25% cut was down to $105,000 annually. This was a 45% reduction in funding in only 2 years. We've agreed a slight increase to up to $120,000 annually, which we are currently at. And I do want to mention that this is in the governor's budget for appropriations this year. Area 2 has successfully proven that it can do more with less. As the budget guys have asked us to do, this long-standing, successful, and beneficial partnership between Area 2 and the state of Minnesota continues today as it was those 35 years ago. And like we said earlier, there's 9 counties in the Joint Powers Agreement, and we have many counties with flood retention projects, and there is a waiting list of projects to be done. We help many soil and water districts in our area also. And one comment I want to make is that without Area 2 downstream flooding would be much worse. And we would appreciate your consideration of our appropriation for 2013. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
I don't see any questions. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Erickson, do you have a quick question? We're going to at least do one more bill.
Very brief comment. This seems to be a great place for MinTAC wetland credit money to be going to.
I hear a new lobbying effort. Representative Clark, we will do House. Okay, first of all, I'm going to renew the motion that House File 728 be laid over for consideration. Representative Clark, you have House File 1991. If you'd like to move it, and I understand you have an author's amendment.
I do, Madam Chair. If I could move, I think it's a DE1 amendment.
Let's move the bill first.
Please, I'd like to move House File 1191 to be laid over for possible consideration omnibus.
Right, in the omnibus. And then Representative Clark, you have an amendment you'd like to move?
Yes, and then it's the DE1 amendment?
Yes. Members have that amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? The amendment has been adopted.
Madam Chair, if I can just briefly explain the bill, and I have a couple of witnesses, and we'll be brief because I know we're short on time, but I just want to tell you that the amendment puts the bill in a different form that I have negotiated with the Pollution Control Agency. The issue here is that we have areas in our communities where we have a lot of pollution that isn't really being monitored or evaluated. And so a few years ago, we did pass legislation that identified that we have certain areas of the community that are disproportionately impacted. And you'll notice that one of the words that we use in here is that we're talking about the issue of environmental justice, the disproportionate impact of toxic exposure to low-income communities, communities of color. And I'm just bringing with me a map just to remind you of what this looks like in a community like mine. Years ago, we mapped, this is like all of Hennepin County, and this is the Phillips neighborhood. It's near Arsenic.
Could you set that up on the table so we can see it better?
Set it where? Up here? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I have to come around. Okay, you can do it. Okay, so then we mapped a number of toxic exposures. This was the arsenic that was found in our community. That was all over the neighborhood, all over the residential area. But then we also put on the list of kids who were seriously childhood lead poisoned, so they needed intervention. You can see, again, this is the Phillips neighborhood. This is the north side. And then we added the issue of asthma, which is very much related to air pollution that happens from mobile sources like cars, trucks, and so on. This is what this neighborhood looks like when you put all these on top of each other. This is what environmental injustice looks like when you have a disproportionate exposure of people in a particular community. So what turns out is the monitors that the PCA has to look at some of these issues, they don't have enough monitors. And there have been a number of meetings to talk about this with them over the last couple of years. And the two witnesses I have are just going to briefly tell you that they've been at those meetings and some of the concerns. So what this bill does, it would allow us to measure some of the exposures there, but it would do more than that. This amendment would be available around the state for any places where there are communities that are having this kind of disproportionate impact. And so what we do in this bill, in this amendment, is a bill as amended, is to have 3 sites that are mobile, not in the way I originally thought, but still very mobile, 1 to 3 months measuring, and they'd be available, in different parts of the state. I know that Rochester and a few other places are interested in this, as well as places in the metro area. So I'm just going to leave it at that and ask my two witnesses to make some brief comments about why we need this proposal. And the PCA is here. They can respond to this bill as amended too, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, my name is Jose Luis. I'm Executive Director of Tamales and Bicicletas, a Latino-led environmental justice organization. I'm also a resident of East Phillips and also a father. And I think it's really important for all residents and our children and also the health of our environment that we include more of these air monitors in these target neighborhoods. As an organization, we take youth, inner-city Latino youth, into the boundary waters to engage Latino youth to be stewards of our environment in the cities and also in the boundary waters too as well. So this is really, really important for the health of our community and for the health of our state to have more, to introduce these monitors in our statewide.
Hi, my name is Carol Pass. I'm the chair of East Phillips, and I have to say, and I live in Phillips, we have been working for years to change this map. We haven't succeeded. We've kept out with a previous bill polluters, additional pollution, but we can't make a dent in this asthma. And we have some major industries there that are unmonitored. We've tried hard to get them to get the appropriate monitoring. I have to honestly say that the last thing the city told me was that they do not have the equipment to do this, and so I was shocked because we have industries that are fulminating over our 7,000 children, the most populous area for children in Minneapolis, and in particular not only for children but for minority children or ethnically specific children, diverse kids. And I think this is a problem all over the United States. Old industrial areas accumulate impoverished populations because the businesses, some of them move out. We've dealt with the land, we've dealt with the arsenic quite well, but the pollution, we cannot seem to make a crack in this. And so we really need some heavy-duty monitoring and really to figure out what's happening to our kids and to make a change with this. It's got to happen. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I forgot to mention on the amendment, there is just actually two words that need to be changed. I did talk to staff about it. On line 1.5, instead of saying the metro area, it should say in Minnesota. This is a statewide opportunity that we're talking about, Madam Chair. If we could delete, and I think
we generally don't take amendments unless there's consensus on the amendment, but my guess is there would be consensus on this amendment. So we are going to, Representative Clark has moved to delete metropolitan area and insert Minnesota.
That's right. Thank you.
I don't see any questions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, that amendment is adopted. I think we should hear a word from the Pollution Control Agency.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is David Thornton from the Pollution Control Agency. I guess it would be fair to say that we never have enough money to do as much monitoring as people want us to do. We've been working closely with Representative Clark. We had some concerns with the way the bill was originally drafted. We think that this is something that works for us. We think that we can work with some of the communities. I know that the city of Minneapolis is particularly interested in working with us. We hope to talk to St. Paul, Ramsey County, Hennepin County, and then there are other places around the state that we think could benefit from this monitoring as well. So we're fine with the way things are written now.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative Clark or for the witnesses? Thank you, Representative Clark.
Madam Chair, if I could just ask, when we had an issue like this in my district, actually it was done, and I don't believe it cost the state any money. We had asked for some additional air monitoring around the 3M Chemelite plant, 3M Cottage Grove. I guess I always want to call it Chemelite, but it's really 3M Cottage Grove. Commissioner Thornton, didn't we have industry pay for that, and then in the end, both sides decided to no longer continue with monitoring, at least short term, because there was no problems with after we did the additional monitoring. Has this been looked at here? I think Representative Clark's got some good ideas. Is there not some industry that we could work with if there's a perceived problem that would be willing to cooperate?
Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chairman, Representative McNamara, when we have a big industry, we frequently take those kinds of approaches. And I could go into a lot of examples, but particularly in the communities that Representative Clark is talking about, it's mostly smaller businesses and smaller industries and pollution from mobile sources. And so the opportunity to go to one place and get them to pay for the monitoring is not there.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Clark. We're going to lay over House File 1191 for possible inclusion.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
Members, we have still a long list of bills to do. I did want to get the ones where we had people coming in. I think we did cover. Oh, Representative Erickson?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the minutes of our last meeting.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. All those in favor of the minutes of the last meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Minutes are adopted. We are in recess until 4 o'clock or 15 minutes after session, whichever comes sooner. We're going to get our work done.
You're back here.
I believe we...